Oh no, it looks like the world is at war again, and this time it's personal. Out within the Middle East, nuclear weapons have been deployed and it looks like it's going to trigger everyone to launch their own. Of course, with no surprise to anyone, Russia and America would go on to obliterate themselves in the process, as hundreds of warheads would hit the sky, taking out major cities in the process, as well as many of the people who live there and soldiers who desperately try to save citizens as best they can. In this scenario within 2013, you are one of the lucky ones who have been escorted down into the beautiful metro stations of Moscow to survive the bombs above, as well as outlive the radiation that would linger on the surface for many years after the event. Venturing here with whatever you can get your hands on, you now have to try and work out how to set up your new life. And let's be honest, you won't have much down here. This new life is a fresh start and based in a dark, depressing world where you may never see daylight ever again. So where would you live? What would you eat? What do you do for work, and who do you side with during your time here? And ultimately, how do you tackle the dark horrors down in the dark tunnels? Well, in today's episode, we will be exploring the Metro world and give you a lore survival guide so you know what you'd be doing down here in the dark depths of the post-apocalyptic world. Also, I apologize in advance for some terrible Russian name pronunciation. I really tried my best, but it's such a tough language for me personally that some I may stumble over. This is the lore survival guide, how to survive the world of Metro. The date is the 6th of July 2013, and today is the day everything changes. Today is the Great War of 2013, and the nuclear weapons are moments away from being fired all over the planet. Unfortunately, no one really knows when these nuclear missiles are going to be launched. The military are on guard waiting for any signs of it. The government are making preparations to escape the main cities and live away from the hot zones because ultimately they are the targets here. But for the common Russian Joe walking the street, today is just another day. If you are aware of international issues, then you might be preparing for the day, and most if not all people in major cities will know that the safest place to get to if it all kicks off is your nearest metro station, as that'll be free from the blast of the bombs and keep you safe, similar to how the underground was used in Great Britain in World War II. They also have massive hermetic doors, so it keeps any radiation blast from getting in. If you lived outside of the main cities, however, like in the Volga River in a nice little boathouse or hut, you will most likely be safe as long as you keep a vital Geiger counter on you at all times, because even though a city might be some distance away from you, that radiation will destroy the land, causing new creatures to form, but also lots of resources to also die in the process, meaning you best pray you have a ton of canned food or ways to get some food and water, because once those bombs fall, the Earth's atmosphere will change forever, and your crops, if you live on a farm, will be gone for good. If you were to be in a plane during this moment, then my apologies, you aren't making it at all, as Russia would be hit with EMPs as well, taking out aircrafts, allowing them to see the mushroom clouds rise above the skyline as they plummet into the ground. Russia wouldn't be the only one hit in this war as mentioned, and on top of that, they wouldn't be the only one who had survivors. Out in the rest of the world, America would also have survivors, same as parts of Europe, Africa, and other countries out within Asia and the rest of the world. If you're traveling to the Middle East or live there, however, I'm sorry to say, you'll have zero chance of survival, as that region will be utterly annihilated in this war. But this isn't about the other countries, the enemies if you will. This is about Russia and how you survive there. Once the bombs come and hit the city of Moscow, you will have mere minutes to act, trying desperately to gather yourself and maybe your family to get to the nearest metro station you know of, whilst also battling through hordes of people doing the exact same thing as you. If you're lucky enough to get to the station of your choice, you'll be escorted down to the actual station down below, and there you will most likely await processing by the people in charge of this whole operation of saving civilians. The big stations in the heart of Moscow, however, might have so many people rushing to the doors that there is no way the soldiers can let you in, and sadly, the doors will be closed on you and your family, and with that, you have met your end. You can certainly seek your own shelter like a phone booth, but if you were to live in it, you'd most likely become trapped and lose your mind as you watch the world burn around you, forcing you to end your life right there. Being trapped in the open Moscow city will leave you ultimately ultimately victim to the nuclear bombs and you'll most likely be vaporized by them. Or it could be worse, you could be killed there with your soul stuck on this plane of existence, confused by what is happening around you and just hoping that you can escape this world along with all of the other dead souls trapped there in this now dead city. But for you, the lucky survivor, you will be one of the 6 to 7 million lucky people who can live to see another day. But for the 140 million other Russians and foreign internationals living in the city, they will now be a part of the environment around you, ash in the wind, and any friends and acquaintances you might have had are now most likely gone. It's now time to set up in the stations below, get over any grieving process and shock you might be facing, because it's now a new world, one where food, water and survival is at the forefront and the only thing that matters for now. If you're a foreign international stuck in the country, however, you might be victim to racial attacks from the native residents. If you are American, for example, you are more often than not going to be lynched by an angry mob, unless someone comes in and saves you from a terrifying fate. For a time, you will have to follow the leadership of what would be known as the Metro Command or the United Administration, which would be the leftover remnants of the government. However, that wouldn't last very long, as they would disband very quickly, meaning that factions and stations would become their own thing, and everyone down there was just doing it for themselves and their own communities. So with that said, where are you setting up? What stations would be the best solution for you and your new life? Whilst it's a bit of a boring answer, it's a pretty logical one for the most part, but the station you'll be living in will be the one closest for you when the bombs fell. Whilst you might want to pick out the best, most prosperous station in the metro that has the best minds, most people and high amounts of resources, you have to remember that whilst the metro stations are now pretty much safe havens, a lot of tunnels and access routes would have been completely destroyed due to collapsing things above them, or just by them being completely run down through a lack of use after the Great War. And unless you are a seasoned explorer with no fear and incredible survival skills, and I mean incredible survival skills that are that of legend, you will not be able to just travel to and from station to station on your own. A lot of stations simply do not have the power either, or backup generators, meaning that you cannot see at all where you are going, even if you have a good torch or pocket lighter. That's not to say you can't venture to other stations to seek shelter. You certainly can, especially in these early years, but now in 2033 the travel there might not be an easy one, especially when we explore the threats out there later in this guide. But let's say you have the freedom of movement and you can just pick out any station you want. Where would you live? Well, the easiest choice is of course the station known as Polis, which is renowned as being the station with the most wealth and power. In fact, it's probably the only city-state that exists down in this metro, which makes it completely unique. This whole city is grand looking, as it is based down underneath the Moscow State Library, which was previously known as the Lenin Library. This station being located here allows for people to access books from the past world that help keep them educated and informed about the world around them, and because of that, allows for a very well educated society that lives here. This attracted many great minds to move into this station when it was all being set up, and because of that, Polis is home to people from pre-war universities, artists, artisans, musicians, poets, physicists, chemists, biologists and mathematicians, as well as a lot of protective machinery and equipment that keeps the city-state station safe from anyone or thing that might try to attack it and its people. It's essentially the epitome of a safe haven and a perfect place to live in the post-apocalyptic world, and actually to anyone visiting from other stations, it is so well lit that you might need to wear sunglasses because of how bright it is in comparison to other ones out there. That said, if you were to live here, you'd have to provide something of importance. Be skilled in a specific skill that will help out this capital city station, or provide something like joining up with the defense groups there to help protect it. Whilst it's never stated, it's like any main big city. If you just want to live there without worry about the outside world and provide nothing, you'll most likely be chucked out on the streets, or in this case, back into the tunnels, and be seen as just a nobody who doesn't provide anything for the rest of the station. Polis is the dream, and if you were to get in here being a scientist or engineer, then that's really it. You won't have to worry about anything else in this guide. You're pretty much safe living in a life of luxury in the the New World. However, it's not the only safe station out there. The VDNKH Commonwealth, which was assembled within the late 2020s, is a pretty well protected group of stations that work together to help their trade routes and protection of people. Located out on the Kulishsky-Rishskaya line, this Commonwealth consists of 3 stations: VDNKH, Alexievskaya, and the other one of Rizhskaya, also known as Riga. And together, these 3 do regular business with one another, allowing for safe travel between stations on a caravan, and ultimately they provide all of the people with food and resources to keep them going on a regular basis. Not only that, but this station also works like that of a town or city in the pre-war world, where it is policed to make sure there is a lot of law and order running through their areas, and anyone who was to steal or cause a problem for others will be harshly punished by whatever station they live in. If you were to live within these stations, you will also be given a passport which will allow you to free travel to all of the other locations, meaning that if you are wanting to trade, you can do that by just showing your passport and taking a trip on a nice pushcart. Most of these stations also house small libraries, including their own books and some bought from Polis, allowing you to get some nice reading on your day off of work or traveling between the Commonwealth stations, and allows for the children living there to be pretty well educated on everything going on now and things before the war. On top of that, they are pretty well off in terms of money, as they offer unique services and items that other stations don't, such as their specialty mushroom tea, which they are renowned for all over the metro. Because of these features, the VDNKH is a popular one with immigrants who have traveled to the metro looking for a new home. That said, the VDNKH Commonwealth don't take in immigrants whenever they want. In fact, they are incredibly hostile to anyone who has made it to them unannounced, and will more often than not let them into their community. So if you did want to live in this station, you'd have to offer something really beneficial to them, or they would just wave you back down the tunnel you came from. Another group of 3 stations is nicknamed as Venice, simply because they have been majorly flooded over the years, meaning the citizens here have to use boats to venture from bit to bit to do shopping or just to go and see a neighbor. This certainly is one of the normal stations to live in, but that said, it has a ton of problems inside of it. The major one being the fact that it's run by gangsters who take no prisoners. These gangsters are extremely vicious, and if you get on the wrong side of them, will probably never see another day in this tribute to the water city of Italy. Then again, a station run by gangsters does mean that there is a freedom to do what they want in terms of business, allowing them large economic freedoms, and matched with the fact that they're open to visitors means that it's a thriving area, even if there is a relaxed approach to crime. If you were to live here, however, it's not all luxury. The water surrounding it is filled with radiation, as you can imagine, but if you are willing to risk it utilizing scanners, you can catch a nice fresh fish to sell on the market or to feed your family. Ultimately, if you stay on the right side of the gangsters, this can be a nice area to live in, and it's a pretty scenic one too. Kitayguru is a similar station to Venice, where it is run by 2 gangs. The first gang being the Russian Bratva called the Brother Slavs, and the second gang being a group of Caucasian Muslims from locations such as Azerbaijan and Czechia. This is a pretty safe station to go to some extent. However, there are no laws or law enforcement within it, and anarchy and crime runs throughout the streets. That said, it is a hotspot for different types of culture, and will have people playing music in the streets that you might not have heard before. It's probably one you'd want to see, but maybe not live in forever, unless you're a member of these gangs. Market Station is an extremely popular one for many within the metro, as it does exactly what it says. It is a large market for people to go and buy things from. Because of the nature of this station, it is heavily protected by guards, and once inside through all of the checks, you will be able to purchase a wide variety of guns, ammunition, fix your rail car, and live within a train car that has been retrofitted to be a living quarters. Essentially, for your common Joe, Market Station is a pretty solid place to live, with good links to other stations all over the metro. Sevastopolskaya Station is one that is sort of safe to live in, but there's certainly a catch. Everyone is trained to fight here and protect it from mutants that attack them on a regular basis. The reason why they're attacked here on a day-to-day basis is because the engineers here are able to produce 2/3 of the metro's electricity. The generators are located south of the hermetic doors, meaning the huge doors protecting them from the outside world and the horrors that live there has to be wide open at all times, meaning anything can just charge in at any time. So if you are wanting a station that has good protection, then I guess you'll get it here, but you'll have to be on the front lines at all times, defending from God knows what. And yes, even if you are a child. The same sort of applies down in Hull Station or Paveletskaya, whose hermetic door doesn't even exist, meaning they are victim to regular attacks from what they call visitors. Their constant effort to close up is always in vain, as they are constantly fighting a losing battle. On top of that, another reason you wouldn't really want to live here is because the living conditions are absolutely abysmal, where the air is heavily irradiated and the water is also incredibly polluted. This has left people being incredibly weak and their children to grow with mutations on their bodies, such as lack of limbs or lack of fingers. There is a heavy curfew here, however, which does help keep people safe, especially as the visitors mainly come at night. But because of how heavily guarded they are as well, none of the warring factions that we were exploring a bit attack this station, mainly because no one wants to live there, as if they were to attack it, mutants would pour into the station and take it for themselves. But the other reason why they don't take it is out of respect for the people that are living there and what they are going through. Curse Station is another one that is filled with civilians wanting to survive just another day, but realistically you wouldn't really want to live here, as it is in a constant battle for survival. Located on an escalator, you can live inside a not so luxury makeshift shelter where you can endlessly fend off hordes of mutants. And to be honest, if you're looking for a place to stay, Curse is definitely not that one, but if you're on the run and need some human interaction and protection, it can be of some help anyway. Smolensk is a heavily militarized and organized one as well. Most people who live here are soldiers, but together with the civilians living here as well, they are a very closed off society. So if you were to travel here and try and integrate with them, you will be met with silence pretty much. So it's kind of like the VDNKH if you are an immigrant wanting to live here, and if you are probably knocking on the wrong door. Ultimately, those are the stations that you could choose to live within, as they are some of the more calm ones out there. Some of them might be on their last legs, but they are still housed with people, and who knows what the future holds for them. But say you have chosen to live in one of these stations, or have stayed put in the one you went down when the bombs fell. What do you do for work? What jobs are on offer, and how do you get paid? There are a variety of different jobs within the world of Metro for you to do in this post-apocalyptic world, but jobs aren't just something you set your life studying for or anything like that. Down in the Metro, by the time you've reached maturity, or even sometimes before that, you will be assigned a job based on what you are good at or what is needed in your station. For example, in the station of Sevastopolsk, by the time you are of age to hold and fire a weapon, you'll be made to defend the station with your life. If you live here, that's essentially your job, and that's about it. In the VDNKH Commonwealth stations, for example, there seem to be a variety of different jobs you can do. With their mushroom tea industry being so big, a lot of people are assigned to be mushroom farmers and to work with the tea production, so they can sell it all over the Metro and make them and the station pretty profitable. There are also pig farmers who are pretty common throughout VDNKH and Riga, who tend to their pigs and sell them to provide food for people, although dealing with livestock is not always easy, and many farmers in Riga state that their pigs usually get sick, maybe due to the air quality, lack of hygiene tools and areas for cleaning them, or just unfortunate circumstances. Same applies for the fishermen and women within Venice. Fishing certainly is a good job for many living here, what with the water surrounding them. However, the constant monitoring of whether a fish is healthy or not with their scanners means that you're having to constantly be on it with what you catch and what you hand out to the people of the stations. And speaking of Riga, prostitution is also a popular job there, as well as other forms of entertainment to make sure that the people are distracted from the horrors of this new world. This is usually popular with the more common role within the metros, that being your standard soldier or lookout guard. These people, who are usually the majority in most stations, make sure there is order on the streets, being told what to do by the station's officer or authority figure. The main job is to be on the lookout to make sure their station isn't being raided by bandits or mutants, or even warring factions looking to spread their political agenda throughout all of the metro. For some stations, it is to guard the hermetic door to make sure nothing can get through, or if anyone wants to go out onto the surface for some reason, like a resource run or to travel to another station that can't be accessed by another tunnel. For most, this will be the main job they will have, and will most likely go through basic training to make sure they know the basics of survival and using a weapon. There's also weapon makers who will handcraft their own new metro weapons, such as the trusty bastard SMG or the air-powered rifles that fire pellets and arrows arrows at their targets. Obviously, this role is massively important as a lot of good weaponry was lost in the war, as well as being extremely expensive on the market as it was salvaged from the surface, or it's being held by military forces down below. With these weapon makers, it means people can be armed for cheap, and most of these weapons are extremely useful to fend off mutants and bandits. There are other skilled roles, but Polis is the one that makes it clear what all of these jobs mean in society, as they base your job around a caste system, essentially a form of class system, so you know where your rank in society is, and the lower the job, the lower on the class system you are, and vice versa. In Polis, these castes are known as Kshatriya, Brahmin, Vaisyas, and Shudra. The Kshatriya in Polis are your top military soldiers and the police force who play a major role in keeping everyone safe. Some go on to be higher up within the military, but we will explore that lot in a minute. These Kshatriya also work as stalkers, groups of individuals who venture up to the radiated surface of Moscow in the search for valuable supplies for their communities back underground, willing to risk their lives to make sure the station continue to live on. These stalkers are massively respected by pretty much everyone in the metro and are considered as completely mad to put their lives at risk on a daily basis. However, to get a role as a stalker, most of the time these individuals come from military backgrounds before the war. The Brahmin are your white-collar workers. They are the skilled, educated workers down in the metro that consist of jobs such as scientists, teachers, writers, poets, artists, and many more that provide the new world with new inventions, medical knowledge and aid, and entertainment. If you are a person that surrounds yourself with culture and you are a student of something that is stereotypically academic, you will become this caste known as the Brahmin, who get a tattoo of a book on themselves. The Vaisya are the merchants who do what merchants do on a regular basis, sell stuff. Not much to really say about this group of individuals, but if you were to have something unique that no one else has, being a merchant is a brilliant way to make a living. Be that selling guns, food, ammunition, you name it, you can probably sell it, making you a Vaisya. Finally, there are the Shudras, who are at the bottom of the barrel, but that doesn't mean what they do is bad. In fact, without them, the others wouldn't function. These people are essentially the blue-collar workers and do things such as cleaning, emptying sewage areas, all of the stuff that is really horrible, but necessary work for the rest of the metro and mainly Polis to function at a high standard. If you were to see anyone sweeping the halls or just cleaning a building, they would more often than not be a Shudra. Unfortunately, because of this system they have in place, it does bring about some classism, even though Polis is meant to be a bastion of pre-war life and decency. But in reality, the Brahmins and Kshatriya are the ones that control things and are put in positions of authority, such as the Polis Council, whilst the Vaisya and the Shudras are pretty much ignored by them. This also passes down into where in Polis they live. Obviously, the better the job, the better the living conditions. The worse the job, the worse conditions. So you best hope you are a well-educated individual or served in the military before the war, or you'll just be another voiceless worker in the city-state station. Obviously, these are just some of the known jobs that stand out, but like with the real world, I am sure there are many more out there, and if you offer something unique to the people, I am sure they will pay you for your service. And speaking of which, how do you get paid in this new world? Because let's be honest, paper money or coins do not work anymore really, as the national banks do not really exist anymore. Well, to put it simply, you will be paid in precious military grade ammunition, which is of real rarity in the world. Regular bullets are also used as a form of payment, as well as other things such as general trade items to help you live. But for a really good, well done job, you will be paid in pre-war military grade 5.45 by 39mm rounds or MGR ammunition. The reason why this one is selected is because it is incredibly powerful when used in an appropriate rifle, but also it is incredibly hard to counterfeit, making its value increase even more. Sure, you can still use these bullets in your guns, but you'd literally be shooting money at your target, and what an utter waste that would be, unless you're totally rich in this new world. So now you have your assigned job, or at least a job you're good at, and you are being paid in either food, resources, regular ammunition, or pre-war military ammunition. It's time to get on with your life, but sometimes it's better to join up with a faction or group that will help you live in the metro and help you fulfill that political ideology you love or the worldview you hold dear. So who is there to join? many different groups and factions to join down in the metro stations. Some are just trying to help one another out, others have more horrific worldviews, and others are just trying to shape the new world into the way they want. A lot of the time, the station you are a part of will usually determine which faction and group you will be a part of as well. For example, if you live in the VDNKH Commonwealth, you will be a part of this specific faction, which is actually one of the youngest in all of the metro. The Baumansky Alliance is also the same. Located within 3 stations, these people would group together throughout the subway and repair pre-war machinery and sell it around the metro, meaning that they are always protecting each other and make it so that no one can abuse their skills. The Belaruskaya trade outpost is also similar, as it is a group of trading stations that have banded together to trade around the metro. Belaruskaya is one of the leading producers of food in the metro, especially when it comes to livestock, and together as this small faction, they can trade with anyone they wish to deal with, as they hold no political ideas at all. All they want is to just trade their goods with others, and like with the other factions, united by trade and protection, it works relatively well for them. Looking into the main protagonists of the factions, we have the Arbat Confederation to start it off, a group that is heavily focused on an ethnic diverse world and one that focuses heavily on a hyper-capitalistic economic system. This group was once huge and majorly influential before the year of 2033, where it is now just 3 stations. But for those who were from the eastern republics of the late USSR, such as Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, etc., this would be the faction you'd join, especially if you were a proud capitalist who enjoyed the fruits of life from that lifestyle. Linked closely to that mindset is the big faction known as the Hansa or Hanseatic League, or as they're actually known politically, the Commonwealth of the Stations of the Ring Line. This faction has a lot going for them. Whilst they aren't the most powerful in terms of military strength, this group occupies one of the most important lines in the metro for trade links, that being of course the ring line that surrounds the capital. This allows them to be one of the best trader factions in the metro, if not the biggest one, as they monopolize the travel of traders from station to station. On top of this luxury of wealth, the Hansa are pretty neutral when it comes to politics, as they only really want to focus on trade throughout their line, which does anger other factions. But apart from a few spats, the Hansa keep to themselves most of the time. They also have strict border controls where citizens have to provide them with identification of a valid passport to make sure they aren't smugglers or bandits looking to cause trouble in their stations. This makes this faction a really serious one, as they have law and order in all of their stations. Again, if you like good old capitalism and law and order without looking into world politics and the such, the Hansa would be the faction for you. Polis is obviously in of itself its own faction, with how much power and influence it holds over the land, and has its own political view on things going on. As we've mentioned, they are big on trade, culture, and trying to bring back the old world style of society back to the norm. However, there is another faction based in Polis which you could join if you were chosen or good enough to join it, that being the Rangers of the Order. These guys are essentially military professionals and higher in rank than that of the Polis Kistera. In fact, most are promoted from this group to serve within the Rangers, as they have proved themselves as fantastic stalkers and protectors of Polis and its people. These Rangers are the best of the best, as they carry state-of-the-art military equipment with them at all times and roam around the metro and the surface, taking out any attacking force that look to be invading the stations or hurting defenseless people. This faction is said to be completely neutral politically, even if they have very close ties with Polis. But if there were to be a battle between 2 other factions, the Spartan Rangers would not get involved unless they were personally attacked or civilians were needing evacuation to get them out of harm. Whilst I'm sure most of you would want to be part of this noble faction, unfortunately only 250 men and women can be a part of it, and most, if not all of the members who are currently in it are ex-Russian special forces or have heavy military experience, making them the best fighters out there. So if you wanted to join them, you'd have to prove yourself as being one of the best warriors within the metro and stand your ground against 249 of the other best warriors. Out within the rest of the metro, we have the 2 devastating factions who bring nothing but chaos to the rest of the world. These 2 factions base their whole world around the old political ideas from before the Great War and try to enforce them on the other stations most of the time by force. The first being the Fourth Reich, a fascist faction who who are majorly inspired by the workings of Adolf Hitler and his Third Reich. Led by the Führer, this group would follow in Adolf's teachings and bring that down to the Metros, believing that what they were doing was for the good of New Russia, and they were ridding the world of the people that were harmful or not genetically good enough. Based out within the triple station of Tverskaya, Chekhovskaya and Pushkinskaya, if you were to live within these stations, the Fourth Reich would be your main faction that you join, and if you try to run and leave, well, it probably wouldn't work out too well for you. If you were to stay and fight for what you believe would be the best cause, then your force would be small in size, but would be equipped extremely well with some of the best weaponry in the Metros, making them a formidable force in battle. On the other side would be the Red Line, a Marxist, Leninist and Neo-Stalinist faction that tries to keep the idea of the Soviet state at the forefront of their society. Led by their leader Maxim Moskvin, you would be brought into this faction simply by living within the Sokolnitskaya line, and being a part of this faction you will be forced to live under strict censorship, political and social repression, and webs of spies and informants all over the place. However, despite this harsh society, many do want the world of the communist movement to come back, so believe in the Red Line goal, same as how the Reich believe in their cause. Fighting for this faction would mean you are surrounded by a ton of recruits similar to you with next to no training whatsoever, with weaponry that will most likely fail as soon as you pull the trigger. But there's so many of you that eventually you'll break through, even if it means thousands of you will die in the process. Eventually, it will be a success. What a faction. These two factions continue their bitter hatred of each other and are in constant heated exchanges with one another, and if you were to be a part of either, your existence during this time will be pretty much going to war, fighting for your cause, so you best hope you truly believe in it, otherwise that was a waste of a second opportunity at living in this new world. That said, both the Reds and the Nazis do own some of their own stations, so you will be getting living quarters in stations such as Theatre Station and Pushkinskaya, where you will get food and water produced by them, so there are some benefits even if you only get them for a day before you are sent to your death. There are some smaller factions who also go against the Reds and the Nazis and seek to destroy them completely, being somewhat splinter factions holding similar views, such as the Revolutionaries and the Huliopole Republic. For a few of you, the norm might not be something you want. Maybe you are an extremely religious individual or are easily swayed by motivational speakers, or maybe you found yourself in really dire need of food and resources in a station that isn't that great. Well, have no fear, there is a faction for you out there. The Watchtower, for example, are one of the religious factions who occupy the tunnels south of Supokovskaya. In this faction, there are a group of Jehovah's Witnesses who live and preach out of a subway train turned monastery. These individuals would believe that the end times are already upon them, and the people who have remained down in the Metro after the Great War are those selected by God to ascend to heaven. If you love preaching the word of God and how some people are sinners, etc., then the Watchtower is the group for you. If not, they'll probably bore you to death with their religious preaching and contradictory statements. On the other side of the pendulum are the Satanists, who to many are just a myth that are said to exist within the stations of Dubrovka all the way to Lublino. These individuals have essentially gone insane because of the Great War and now capture Metro dwellers, forcing them to dig a huge hole in the Lublino station in which they believe will bring them to a portal to hell itself. So if you've lost your mind because of the war and the prospect of living down in the Metro all of your remaining life, or maybe you want to be like the Doom guy and take on some demons and breach the faction of hell and kill them for good, then maybe the Satanists would be the one for you. Another group who have essentially lost their minds are the savage cannibals of the Great Worm cult, who have been separated from the rest of the Metro due to a collapsed tunnel, meaning they lack resources and power. Because of this, they are now extremely technophobic and xenophobic, located in Park Puberty, living in an extremely primitive way. Now living in horrific dark conditions, this cult worships an entity known as the Great Worm, which they believe created the whole world of the Metro. But the darker side to them is that instead of shunning people who use technology, they instead capture them and cannibalize them, on top of stealing children and bringing them into the cult as new recruits, their main target being the people of the Arbat Confederation. So whilst you most likely won't be randomly joining this cult unless you were trapped with them after the war, there's certainly one to look out for, especially if you did end up joining the Arbat and decided to have children. The last of these random factions would be a very different one that not many people know of as they are so secretive, that being the faction of the Molodovznaya. This faction is an isolated society society of human mutants who stay at the station of the Filovskaya line. The reason why the people here are heavily mutated is because the station here is extremely shallow, meaning there are high levels of radiation within it. Most have died due to the sickness or disease, but those who remained became mutants, with some even containing unique psychic and hypnotic abilities. Unfortunately, venturing out of this station would be unwise, as the rest of the clean metro do not take kindly to them and kill or imprison them. Because of this, they are extremely isolated away from the rest of the world. So realistically, if you were mutated by the surface or some awful water over the years, you'd probably want to move to this station and join this faction of the human mutants, as the rest of the metro will not take kindly to you. Of course, there's also the rogue life where none of the factions are good for you and you do not like any political movement either, and with that you can just become a bandit, raiding any small stations for resources, taking any prisoners to do whatever you want with, and many other things. This means you'd be a target to any of the other factions out there and would not really be allowed in any major station, apart from maybe Venice, where you'd probably be welcomed with open arms. So yeah, if none of the factions are good for you, then the bandit life it is. But it certainly isn't an easy life, as living outside of the station borders, you'll be victim to the horrors that live down there, or at least the horrors that raid it on a regular basis as well. And speaking of which, what exactly will you be facing when you do go out for a little travel? Whilst humans fighting is probably the most harmful thing within the metro, the mutants roaming them are probably the most terrifying to encounter and take on. And if you were to just venture from place to place, you best know how to take them on, or you'll be eaten within seconds. The most common of the mutants seen in the metros are the Nautiluses, fierce predators who are extremely territorial and when in large packs can take out their prey with ease. These creatures come in all different shapes, sizes and colours, but they're all deadly when they come face to face with you. They're also the size of an average human, so if you think you could melee one off of you when it leaps, good luck with that. Your best option is to simply take it out with a trusty shotgun or rifle and pray you have enough bullets to take them all on. Whilst Watchers are a mutant that live up on the surface mainly, they will also venture down to the metro stations to seek out prey. Now you're probably thinking, they're vicious dogs. So what? Easy to kill if you're in a group of soldiers? Well, yes, but also no. Watchers are given the name because they can stand up on their hind legs and observe their prey they are wanting to get, and they analyze any weaknesses you and a group might have. Essentially, these creatures not only have the strength and ferocity of a big wolf, but they also are able to trick their foe or separate groups to get the advantage. So whilst you might think you could take a Watcher on, they will most likely try and find your weakness and exploit it extremely well. Definitely not one to take on your own or even in a small group, but luckily you won't be seeing them much unless they can tell you're living in a failing station, and if so, they will maximize on your misery. Out within the dark, abandoned tunnels and stations are the corpse eaters, ant-like insects that will devour anybody that might get in their way, be that human, other mutant, or even their own kind. Whilst they aren't exactly a big threat to you like the Watchers or Nautiluses are, they are a pretty horrific sight when hordes of them dive onto a dead body near you, and who's to say they wouldn't pounce on an unconscious human if they passed out in one of these locations? If you ask me, that's a pretty horrifying way to go if that is true. Located in the dark tunnels is probably one of the most terrifying creatures in this new world, those being the spider bugs, a sort of spider-scorpion hybrid that scatters about the dark stations and tunnels and tries to ambush its prey from within the shadows. These creatures of all different shapes and sizes form together and will dig tunnels and utilize vents to get around, and will stop at nothing to kill what they are chasing. If you were to find yourself in a very dark part of the metro, you better hope you have a weapon and a light source on your person. Otherwise, these spider scorpions will swarm you completely and kill you with their tail stingers and their big teeth. Shrimp are pretty horrifying creatures that lurk within the waters of the metro. If you were to be sailing down one of the rivers or flooded stations, these creatures, who are only female down in the metros but on the surface are male as well, will go on to spit their acid at you, and you will better hope you have a gas mask on to protect you from it, or it will most likely blind you from seeing ever again. Even with the gas mask, it will blind you for a while, leaving you vulnerable to attacks from anything else in the area, like Nautiluses, spider bugs, or even Watchers. Lurkers are probably one of the most deadliest mutants down within the metro, as they travel extremely fast, are small in frame, dig tunnels wherever they want, and can ambush you when you least expect it. Not only that, but they will also hit extremely hard if they catch you off guard, and if you were to enter their territory, they will most likely rip you to shreds in seconds. Most of the time these mutants attack in groups, but even on their own they can cripple you, leaving you on the floor desperately needing help. Best way to deal with a lurker is by just getting out of the area as soon as possible, although staring at their nest or emergence hole will put them off attacking you, as these creatures much prefer to ambush you from the shadows. Those are the main mutants you will be facing down within the metro stations. Granted, you can take them on and kill them if you are armed and protected, but it won't be an easy task as they all have their own unique characteristics that make them formidable foes. If you were a brave soul who wanted to venture up onto the surface, or if you became a stalker or ranger, you'd be facing even more terrifying foes, such as the demons, gigantic bat-like creatures that roam the skies seeking out prey and diving down to grab it with their claws and huge teeth. If you were to brave the outside, you'd not only have to deal with the horrific conditions, but you'd also have to seek shelter away from these brutal beasts that are aptly named as the demons. Normal creatures from the pre-war world still roam about as well, such as bears, snakes, wolves and many more, who are now mutated and pack a mean punch if you are to walk into their territory, so you're really not safe from them either, as well as some plants that can also pack a mean punch. But one of the most brutal creatures on the surface of Moscow are the librarians, who are luckily only located within the library of the city. These creatures are huge in size, like overly enhanced gorillas, and are said to be the most intelligent mutants out there, who will obliterate you in a heartbeat if you upset them. The best and only way to deal with these monstrosities is by facing them as if you are bigger than them or an equal. If you do face off with them, they'll leave you alone, but if you turn your back on them, or move too quickly, or God forbid knife them or shoot them, you'll just end up as a body for them to snack on as they store your bones within their den of the library. So now you have both mutants and humans looking to kill you for just simply existing down in the metro and sometimes on the surface. That's all you need to look out for, right? Well, not quite, because the Moscow metros also have other dangers that ultimately there's not much you can do about them. These dangers are so hidden away that even the most trained professionals like the Rangers could not fight them off, and very few know of how to combat them, or even know what to do when they encounter them. So to finish off, let's look at the other horrors down in the metro that most who have seen these things haven't been able to tell the tale of their experience. To start with, the metros are of course not the most hygienic of places to live. There's barely any ventilation, and if you live in one of the smaller, poorer stations, there is most likely going to be diseases spreading all over. This brings us to one of the biggest problems spreading through the metro, and that is dangerous diseases. Most specifically, in the year of 2033 and 2034, the plague is spreading from station to station, raising paranoia with loads of the station lookouts who get worried about anyone trying to get into their station with it. This has led to loads of quarantine zones throughout the stations, and essentially, if you were to just be going about your daily basis, you could encounter the plague just by a passerby, and that would be it. You and your family's lives, and the station as well, would be over in a horrifying way, as well as a painful way as well. Rats who carry these plagues can also join together in massive hordes and raid stations, tearing into everything in its way. Once again, another horrifying way to die in the metro, as Artyom's mother will tell you, as she was killed by a pack of rats invading their original station. But the terrors that really plague the metro are of the supernatural, and there are quite a few examples of these things that will end you then and there if you were to encounter them. Anomalies are the first weird encounter. These are bright blue balls of light that are made of pure electricity. These things have an unknown origin, but they will short circuit most lights in their vicinity, and they also track down any form of movement and kill whatever it is in their way, be that mutants or humans. If you were to find one in your area, the best thing to do is hide and not move in the slightest, and just hope that they do not go straight into your path. If they do, you'll be fried alive. The next is known simply as the Darkness. No, not the rock band that sang that really annoying song. The Darkness is exactly what it says it is. This is a cloud or ball of energy that completely wipes out all electronics in the nearby area, leaving you to only use things like your pocket lighter or a flame torch. Granted, this paranormal entity won't actually attack you, but it will leave you completely hindered hindered with not much sight, leaving you vulnerable to other mutants or the dangerous environment around you. Ghosts of the dead also roam the abandoned tunnels and stations, going through their death over and over again, with their voices calling out to the living through things like the metro pipes. If you were to engage with them, it's most likely the ghost will turn violent and you will join them for an eternity of roaming the metro, hoping to leave this plane of existence. These ghosts can be your traditional ones who look more like shadows and extremely otherworldly, but they can also be clouds of dark energy that will kill you if you simply touch them, and also look like regular humans, and that is where they become the most terrifying. Are you actually talking to a metro resident, or are they dead and believe they are alive? Something many don't even know half of the time. The Great Door is an extremely hostile supernatural phenomenon that not many have experienced, but if you found yourselves within the Lost Catacombs, you may find this entity trying to absorb you into whatever it is. This Great Door is just two large doors slowly opening with a daunting red light that will make you experience a ton of horrific sounds and a very weird experience on top of that as well. Those who have experienced this Great Door have not survived another day, so essentially if you do witness this phenomenon, well, it was nice knowing you. There are also giant supernatural entities who are obscured by fog known as Negnornea phantoms, who will target and kill the youngest members of a group. The reason why they target the young members is to apparently consume their life force. Not many people know what they look like, and in fact it is argued that they aren't actually ghosts or the paranormal at all, just a new form of mutant that has emerged from the new world. And speaking of new form of mutant, that brings us to the biggest threat according to many within the Metro, and that is the Dark Ones. Dark Ones are essentially the next evolution stage for humans, as they have psychic abilities and are huge in stature, can travel at extremely fast speeds, and are incredibly strong if they were to get into a fight. If you were to encounter one of these beings, you will probably not be able to handle the vision of them and will have psychic visions of horrors that aren't actually there, such as watchers attacking you, but in reality the things you are killing with your knife is actually a good friend who also believe you were trying to kill them. Whilst the Dark Ones don't mean to give people these mental breakdowns, they can force them on you if you annoy them. So yeah, Dark Ones, stay on their good side, or try and stay away from them as best you can. Although in the year of 2033, that might be a bit trickier, as they are spreading throughout the metro stations quite quickly, meaning more are losing their minds by their mere presence. And with that is pretty much everything to look out for. So let's answer that question. How do you survive the world of Metro in 2033? Well, quite honestly, it's going to be extremely hard, because even if you are just living in a relatively quiet and safe station, you still have to watch out for things like the plague, mutants who can burrow underground or from the surface, Dark Ones roaming the area, rats and other animals who find their way to you, and probably worst of all, the humans who haven't learned anything from the Great War of 2013 and are still desperate to see the world form into their way of thinking, not caring how many lives they take in the process. Maybe you'll be left alone and you can live a pretty normal life in Polis or some other station, or maybe with a little luck you'll be able to one day break free from the claustrophobic world of the Metro and find a green piece of land where you can rebuild society once again. But for that, you'd need a ton of courage, ton of skill, a ton of luck, as well as loyal friends and family to follow and support you along the way. But for now, this has been a full guide into how you can survive the terrifying world of Metro in the year of 2033, and I hope it helps you on your journey. A huge thank you for checking this video out, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if it is your first time hearing about the Metro games, I hope you can check them out, because they are absolutely brilliant and well worth it, especially if you love survival horror adventure games with good narratives. The books are brilliant as well. 2033 is one of my personal favorites. I want to say a big thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel and bearing with me, as these videos seem to be getting longer each time as well. These include my small fishes, my big fishes, Greg and Knoxvox, my YouTube channel Wise Ones, Sith Lord 906, Video Gamer 75 and RIP City, my sharks Alfred Correa, Jack T and Jason X117, and my megalodons Sinus, Nia Park and Hazy Thoughts. Check out the links below for merch and audio versions, give the video a like and subscribe for more content like this, and with that all said, I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.